Hey guys, Kirill here with Carismo Design. Today we'll be installing a LED shift light steering wheel on a 17 Plus GTR. This is actually one of our new designs with the Ferrari Style LED shift light. Pretty excited to show you how to do it. So this video will double as an installation video for any 17 GTR Plus steering wheel, as well as an installation video on how to wire an LED shift light on the majority of cars. So we'll jump right in and get started right away. All right guys, so first step, like with every install, you want to disconnect your battery. On the GTR, it's under your hood, the left side of the bay. We already loosened it. It's just a 10 mil as it is on most cars. Here we go. So after this, you can pump your brake a few times, just make sure all residual currents are gone from the car, and we can get started on the steering wheel part. All right guys, so we just disconnected the battery on the car. We're now in the interior, we're ready to remove the steering wheel. To get started, the first thing to do is remove the airbag. So the airbag is held on by two springs, which you can access from the sides of the steering wheel housing, and then one clip, which you can access from the bottom of the steering wheel housing. So once you disengage those three, the airbag will come right out and we can proceed to taking the steering wheel off. All right guys, so here we have a spare OEM 17 GTR steering wheel core with the airbag clipped onto it. This will allow us to show you what you're gonna be doing when you're fumbling in the back trying to unclip the airbag. So when you rotate this wheel around, you see here are the two spring mechanisms, and here on the bottom is that third tab that is hovering over the frame here, notched onto it. These 3 points are holding the airbag in. So you're gonna be coming in from the side to pull this spring outward when you're gonna be doing the steering wheel, when you're gonna be removing your airbag. And then the same thing on the other side, as well as on the bottom. You're gonna come in from the hole in the bottom to press upward on this tab to make sure that it clears the little metal ledge. Once all of those 3 points are disconnected, the airbag should pop right out. So we just unclipped our airbag on the sides and on the bottom. We're now ready to pull that out. Gently remove that airbag, and you'll see that on the back you have 3 connectors. That's all you need to unplug before you can fully remove the airbag from the car. So these 2 airbag pins, as typical on most cars, you just slide a tool under the black portion of it to pull this clip out. Same thing on the bottom one. And as always, there's got to be a ground somewhere. So we just unplug this, and that's it. Your airbag is free to come out. So airbag's out. There's 2 more connectors that you want to remove before we proceed in unscrewing the steering wheel nut. This would be the white connector on the right and the gray clock spring connector on the left. Both of these are just push inward on the tab and simultaneously pull connector out. Same thing on this side. Push inward on this tab and simultaneously pull that connector out. So now both of these connectors are out. We can proceed to unscrewing the center nut and taking the steering wheel off the car. Alrighty, so we just disconnected all the necessary clips. We removed the airbag. Now all there is to it is a 19mm socket to remove the center nut, and then the steering wheel can come right off. So we're gonna untighten that. You might need somebody to hold the steering wheel tight for you while you try to unscrew it, because it's torqued on there pretty hard. But once you break that nut loose, you unscrew it all the way. And once you get it off, what you actually wanna do is get it off and put it right back on, give it a couple of turns. The reason we're gonna do that is now we're gonna be tugging on the steering wheel to remove it off of the steering column. Sometimes it sits on there pretty tight, and what happens is when you're tugging on it with no nut in place, you run the risk of ripping it out with a lot of force, which sometimes can take with it the clock spring, and then you broke your clock spring, and that's not something you want to do. So give it a couple of turns as a preventative measure. Now wiggle the steering wheel until it's loose, pull it off, make sure it hits the nut. Okay, that's it, it's off. Now we can take the nut off for good and take the steering wheel off of the car. Hold on to your clock spring wires, to the airbag wires, make sure that they don't come off. And that's it. Steering wheel's off the car. We're ready to transfer over the guts onto your new Carismo steering wheel. Alrighty, so you've got your OEM steering wheel off the car. It's time to transfer over your buttons and the guts of this steering wheel onto your new Carismo steering wheel. So for that, we'll be starting with the center trim. First thing to do with the center trim is make sure you unscrew the 2 screws, Phillips screws up top, holding the trim to the frame. Now, after you've done that, there's gonna be 4 plastic pins holding the trim into the actual steering wheel. They'll be at the ends of the 2 arms, and there'll be 2 of them at the bottom. As well, there will be 2 little clips holding on to the housing on the inside. Once all of these are unclipped, your center trim will come right off of the steering wheel. So we've just removed the center trim. As you see, here are the two holes on the bottom where the guide pins were. Here are the two holes on the sides where the guide pins were. And now we're actually ready to remove the buttons. After that, we'll be working on the paddles. Before you disconnect the buttons, before you actually rip the buttons out of the steering wheel itself, you want to make sure you disconnect the wires that are connected up to the buttons. So we'll do this first, and then we'll wiggle the buttons out of the steering wheel housing. So now that these are out, next step is to remove your shift paddles. As you can see, there's a Phillips screw holding that in. Once you remove those, the housing can come out and we're almost ready to go. Alrighty, so we just unscrewed the Phillips screw right here that was holding the paddles in place. Now they're just kind of, dangling around here. Don't rip them out just yet. What we're gonna do now is we're actually gonna remove the plastic backing, the housing of the steering wheel. That's only held on by 3 tabs. 1 tab here at the bottom, and 2 tabs here in the center by the frame. So once these are spread apart and this is pushed down, the frame will just come out backwards. It helps to have a second pair of hands just to pull it apart. And once that's off, the housing comes off, and so do the paddles. Alrighty, so we've unclipped all the tabs. Now your steering wheel frame should lift right out of the housing, and we're ready for the next step. Oh, and quick mention, make sure you transfer over the spring that holds your airbag from your old frame onto your new one as part of your reinstallation process of the new steering wheel. So this step is only applicable to you if you bought extended carbon fiber shift paddles alongside with your steering wheel. And this step will show you how to disconnect the shift paddle and transfer over the mechanism into your new carbon fiber shift paddle. As you see, we've got the wiring harness for the shift paddle still in the housing. Right here is the connector to your shift paddle. We're gonna just pull that out of the clips that it's being held onto. And right on this side, I'll show you that this connector, just depress this little tab and it pops right off. Here we go. Leave this wiring still in your housing. You don't need to take that out. Here's your shift paddle disconnected. And now we'll disassemble that to put on your new extended carbon fiber shift paddles. So we've got the shift paddle here. We're gonna be removing the actual mechanism out of it. All we're gonna do is we're gonna wedge a tool underneath the inside of the paddle mechanism, and we're just gonna force it outward. It's gonna take some brute force, so yeah, it's probably not gonna clip out right away, but you're unlikely to break anything here. So just tug away at it gently, and you should be able to pop this mechanism right out of the shift paddle, like so. Assembly of the new shift paddle is going to be the reverse of disassembling it. We're just going to clip that mechanism right back in, nose first. That's it. Make sure that it properly clicks, and your paddle is ready to go on your new steering wheel. All right, guys, so here it is. The wheel's all fully assembled. To put it all back together, you basically follow the steps we just took to disassemble it. Put your shift paddles back into your housing, connect them up, put the housing with the paddles on, screw in your paddles by the bolts, pop in your buttons, pop in your center trim, and one thing you can skip is putting the airbag in. We just put this in, for you to see how it looks completed. But yeah, now that the wheel's all assembled, we're ready to put it on the car. All right, guys, so this part of the video is only applicable to you if you're actually installing a LED shift light steering wheel. So we'll talk about the 3 wires that are connected to the steering wheel and how to wire those up to make sure that the shift light works. So for this installation, we're actually going to use 2 of the wires, the black one and the red one. The black one's going to be your ground. We're going to ground it somewhere here in the steering wheel frame. We'll show you where we did it. And for the red one, that'll be your power. We'll tap power on the horn wire that's connected to your airbag. Alrighty, so here we have our assembled steering wheel. Let's talk about the 3 wires. We've got the black ground wire coming out from the side. We wired it through here, which is similar place where our clock spring pin will go, behind the frame, and then to this screw right here. This way it's contacting the metal frame of the steering wheel. Now, the red power wire, we simply attached a tap. You can buy this on Amazon. It's a small piece that just connects up to its opposite end. And where we tap for power was here on the clock spring connector. The clock spring connector is gonna have a brown wire coming out of it. That's actually your airbag horn wire. So here's our tap on that airbag horn wire. Here's our connector on our 12-volt power line for the LED shift light. These 2 will be connected up together. And yeah, then we put the steering wheel on the car, connect up the clock spring, and we're good to go. Okay, so I just mounted the steering wheel on the GTR. We've basically aligned the steering wheel with the top notch right here. That's your clock spring notch, making sure that your steering wheel is mounted vertically. Once that is done, connect the gray clock spring plug on the left and the white clock spring plug on the right. After that, all we've got left is our, oh, that's right, don't forget to torque, obviously torque the center nut to spec. And after that, all we've got left is our horn airbag wire that's got our LED power tapped and our 2 airbag connectors. And we're good to go. Alrighty, so we've got our 2 airbag connectors connected. We've got our horn wire connected up as well. Now we're just gonna make sure to tuck away, the wire from the horn and the power that we tapped into the side of your housing, just to make sure we get it out of the way of the airbag. We don't wanna pinch it or clip it anywhere. And after that, we'll just plug in our airbag and we should be good to go. All right, so we've got the steering wheel on the car. Airbag is plugged in. We just reconnected the power. We're ready to power the car up. One last thing before we do that, we got to make sure we connect the OBD 2-port module that communicates with your ECU to display, the data that is shown on your steering wheel. So for that, you've got the wire dongle, you've got the module. We're just going to connect the wire dongle to the module, and then we're just going to plug in into our OBD 2-port, the other end of it. After that, we should be ready to start the car. Alrighty, time to start the car. Let's see it in action. Obviously, only do this with a warmed up car. You'll likely only see the red lights come on when you're actually driving the car because, on the GTR, it doesn't permit you to rev high enough in neutral. But yeah, a little preview. Alright guys, there you have it. So this was the installation video for the 17 GTR LED shift light steering wheel. We ran you through how to install a 17 GTR steering wheel, how to wire up an LED shift light steering wheel, as well as showed off the new generation shift light. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Give us a follow on Carismo Design Instagram and reach out for any of your steering wheel needs.